Hello, welcome back. Let's start experimenting with the particle sims we have. And this is always the fun part for me. So just to remind ourselves of the layers we do have at the moment, we have the force-based pop sim, and then we have the much more tame velocity at vectored points, which is probably the most detailed version. This is giving us sort of bang for buck on the impact level, so little shock waves, and this is the sort of detailed version of that. So if we look at these together, I guess my first impression, what jumps out to me, is that it feels a bit flat. It feels a bit stuck to the surface, and we do have the volume sim moving quite far into the actual sphere, and our points should be matching that. So you can see the points are being stuck to the surface, but there's also particles moving inside. It's just very subtle. So the end result is something that feels a little bit flat. So my first sort of pop sim attempt here is going to be to try and exaggerate that internal volume of what's happening with our shield. So let's start with this one here. If you remember the portal, the post sim things I was doing was basically a lot of the usual SOP based, so bulge, magnets, attribute transfers, just to push the points around. Another way I like to push points around here is to use the same thing I was doing in here. So in the pop I have this wrangle which is using an SDF and basically moving the points around based on the gradient and the position from that SDF. So I'm going to pop down a wrangle here outside of my sim, and we can do the same thing after the simulation and see what it gets us. So I need our ISO offset SDF. Keep it at input 3. So let's choose a good frame here. So say we have that. At the current settings, this is now saying if a point is outside the sphere, move it back based on the distance that it is outside. So we won't see any changes here, but I can multiply the amount it moves. So here we're saying points exist outside, move them back by distance times 2. And that didn't do anything. So what's my problem here? I think this is op input 3. If I change this, nothing. So let me just double check. There's our SDF. These are our points. Because I have no points outside. So even if I multiply that, it's not falling within our if argument. So it's only doing this if there's points outside of the sphere. In this case, we've already dealt with that in the sim, so we're not seeing any response. And so what I need to say is, if there's points inside the sphere now, so in this case, I'm saying if they're inside, then push them again in that direction. And so now any points we have inside are actually being completely squished into the size of the sphere. So that's cool in itself, but it's not what I want. So as an unintended side effect here from me not reversing my direction, I'm now forcing points outside. So that is very cool. So I'm basically inverting the sim and putting those points on the outside. So we can go pretty extreme with that, and you end up with I really like that. So it's just amazing the kind of results you can get just from playing around and experimenting. And a lot of the stuff I come up with is basically by accident. I was going to try and do some kind of deformation to the points to apply outside the sphere, and my plan right now was to do a deformation to push points further into the sphere. So my ultimate goal is we have these points here that represent the surface, and then we'd have extra points internally, and then after that add some kind of pop sim addition, like not a simulated one but another post sim to push the points out. And I've just done that for myself here. So if we look at this, it's giving me a really cool kind of those sunspot type arcs, because that full simulation on the inside is being inverted and placed on the outside of the sphere. So that's really nice. So I don't need to see the whole mushroom cloud type of effect, so we can try and edit that out. Let me duplicate this and try to do what I was actually trying to do, which is if it's inside the sphere, we'll add or subtract times -2. So there we're taking the points, and if they're inside, push them even further in the direction of that volume's normal. So there's another pretty cool effect we've got just by adding one node essentially, and we've for free gotten 2 pretty amazing extras. And obviously, because we're just inverting and pushing points based on the normal of the volume, our impact is untouched. So the impact position is still perfect, and we can move on from there. So let's start with this outside pushed one. And what I'll do is I'll just scatter some points on our shield. And I'll make these white. And basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to narrow down the amount we see that the points move outside of the sphere. So make these ones black. Use my attribute transfer here. And we'll just transfer that color based on a blend. So we have just a soft fall off there, and what I can do is take the original points because we have that nice color range already built into the simulation, and I'll just multiply the color by our attribute transferred color there. So we'll import the color from the second input. And that's it. So now we have our original color, and we're just making it go darker as it gets further away from the sphere. Okay, and then I can just take the same nodes I've got here. I'll just duplicate these. So we have a color, and this is the one that's exaggerating our moment of contact, or our bright points from our dark points. Then I have our mask based on age and life. We're setting alpha by color, and I'm applying a basic p-scale value. And then we're setting the color. So it looks like my color ramp here is broken now. So there we go. And if I merge these together, and the reason I'm doing this is if I'm applying different alpha values and different color ranges, I can just merge them together and adjust the elements I want to be the brightest. Obviously some of that is going to happen in comp as well, but it's more for visualizing for me. So at the moment we have our base points, and I have this fine layer of points on the surface of the sphere. So it's pretty subtle, but when it moves I think we should get some nice results there. Let me see if I can flatten this out. So a bit of a lighter color. And obviously at this point we can experiment as well and try and push these points even further out. And the result is obviously confined by our attribute transfer here, which is a mask from the sphere. So we can play with stuff like that. And then we have that moving into the animated position. So very happy with that one. Let's see what we can get from the internal one. I think pretty much the same. I don't even know if I need to mask this, so I'll just duplicate the same stuff. Okay, what do we have? We have our base particles, our simulation that appears on top of the surface of the sphere, and we have the points that try and get more internal. So I have another color ramp that's breaking here. I think there's a bug at the moment with these color swaps. These ramps seem to randomly change position and color, so watch out for that. But in any case, on this internal one I want a much wider range here, because I have a sharpness to the main layers. If we look at this, it ramps up from a pretty low gray to a bright white. And the internal one, we're never going to see it if we maintain that same sharpness. So I'll just flatten these out a bit. And by flatten, I mean just take out contrast. We don't want these layers to be extremely visible, so they'll be very subtle. so I can get away with a much flatter contrast, so we can visualize more of the points. So I can even do this and make sure we can see all of those, and the same thing here. So when we merge these all on top, you should hopefully get a good indication of some stuff on the surface there, our main sims, and then a lot of internal volume. It's getting pretty slow in the viewport. So I'm quite happy with that. I think I'll flipbook this now and see how that looks, and then maybe do a quick recap of everything we've done. So I'll see you in the next video.